The United States government once spent $20 million trying to turn a house cat into a secret agent. I'm not making that up. During the Cold War, the CIA literally surgically implanted a microphone, a radio transmitter, and an antenna into a living, breathing cat, then set it loose on the streets of Washington, D.C. to eavesdrop on Soviet diplomats. And what happened next is one of the most absurd, tragic, and bewildering stories in the entire history of espionage. This is the true story of Operation Acoustic Kitty, and trust me, it did not go well. To understand how anyone in a position of power greenlit the idea of a spy cat, you have to understand just how unhinged the Cold War got. We're talking about the 1950s and 60s, a period where the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in an existential staring contest that threatened to end civilization. Both sides were spending billions on intelligence operations, each convinced that the other was just one secret away from total world domination. The CIA was born in 1947, and from the very beginning, it operated with an almost unlimited budget and almost zero oversight. Congress didn't ask too many questions. The attitude was essentially, do whatever it takes to beat the Soviets, just don't tell us the details. And that attitude led to some truly wild projects. There was MKUltra, where the CIA experimented with LSD and mind control on unwitting American citizens. There was Operation Mockingbird, where they infiltrated the media. There were assassination plots involving exploding cigars and poisoned wetsuits targeting Fidel Castro. The agency even explored psychic warfare and remote viewing, paying people to try to spy on the Soviets using nothing but their minds. So when someone at CIA headquarters pitched the idea of using a cat as a mobile surveillance device, it probably didn't even crack the top 10 weirdest proposals that week. In fact, the idea had a certain elegant logic to it, at least on paper. Cats are everywhere. Nobody suspects a cat. A cat could wander into a park, sit near a bench where Soviet agents were having a conversation, and nobody would think twice about it. It was, in theory, the perfect cover. The problem, of course, is that cats are cats. The project that would become known as Acoustic Kitty began in the early 1960s within the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology. This was the branch responsible for developing cutting-edge spy gadgets, everything from tiny cameras hidden in coat buttons to listening devices disguised as everyday objects. They were the real-life version of Q from James Bond, and they were constantly looking for the next breakthrough in surveillance technology. The concept was straightforward. If you could embed a listening device inside a cat, you'd have a mobile, self-powered, completely inconspicuous surveillance platform. The cat could be directed to sit near targets of interest, pick up their conversations, and transmit the audio back to CIA handlers. No one would ever suspect that the stray cat lounging nearby was actually a sophisticated piece of American intelligence equipment. The project was classified top secret, and a small team of scientists, veterinary surgeons, and intelligence officers was assembled to make it happen. They had backing from senior leadership, a generous budget, and the full resources of the most powerful intelligence agency on Earth. What they didn't have was any meaningful understanding of cat behavior, and that, as you might imagine, was going to be a problem. The technical challenges alone were staggering. Remember, this was the 1960s. Transistors existed, but they were still relatively large. Microprocessors hadn't been invented yet. The team had to figure out how to miniaturize a microphone, a radio transmitter, and a power source enough to fit inside a living animal without killing it or significantly impairing its movement. The surgery took about an hour. A veterinary surgeon implanted a small microphone into the cat's ear canal. A radio transmitter was placed at the base of the cat's skull. And here's the part that really gets people: a thin wire antenna was threaded along the entire length of the cat's body, woven through its fur and running all the way down its tail. The cat was essentially turned into a walking, purring radio station. By all accounts, the surgery was considered a medical success. The cat survived, recovered, and appeared to function normally. The devices worked. Audio could be picked up and transmitted. From a purely technical standpoint, the team had achieved something remarkable. They had created a living, biological surveillance device. But then came the part that should have been obvious from the beginning. They had to actually get the cat to do what they wanted. The first problem was hunger. During early tests, the cat kept wandering off to find food instead of staying near its target. The CIA's solution was to perform an additional surgical procedure to suppress the cat's hunger drive, essentially trying to override millions of years of feline evolution with a scalpel. This is the level of commitment we're talking about. They didn't say, hey, maybe cats aren't great spies. They said, let's do more surgery on the cat. The second problem was even more fundamental. Cats, as anyone who has ever owned one can tell you, do not take instructions. You can train a dog to sit, stay, fetch, and heel. You can train a dolphin to perform acrobatic tricks. But a cat? A cat does what a cat wants to do, when it wants to do it. And no amount of CIA funding is going to change that. The trainers spent weeks, possibly months, trying to get the cat to walk to specific locations, sit in designated spots, and stay put long enough to capture useful audio. The results were, to put it diplomatically, inconsistent. But despite all of these red flags, the agency pressed forward. They had spent years and millions of dollars on this project, and they were determined to see it through to a real-world test. Sunk cost fallacy. Meet the Central Intelligence Agency. The details of what happened next vary slightly depending on the source, and since much of the project remains classified to this day, we have to work with the accounts that have been declassified or leaked over the years. But the general story goes like this. The CIA selected a target location for the cat's first real field test. According to the most widely reported version, the target was a park bench near the Soviet compound in Washington, D.C., where two men were known to have regular conversations. The plan was to release the cat from a nearby surveillance van, have it walk across the street to the bench, sit down near the men, and transmit their conversation back to the handlers in the van. The cat was released. And according to the most commonly cited account, the cat stepped out of the van, wandered into the street, and was immediately struck and killed by a taxi. Now, I need to be honest with you here. This version of events is disputed. A former CIA officer named Robert Wallace, who later co-authored a book about CIA gadgets, claimed that the cat was not actually killed by a taxi, and that this detail was an urban legend that grew up around the project. According to Wallace, the project was simply abandoned after the team concluded that the cat could not be reliably directed in the field. The cat, he said, was returned to its normal life. But whether the cat met its end under the wheels of a cab or simply wandered off to do cat things, the outcome was the same. Operation Acoustic Kitty was a complete and total failure. The project was officially shut down in 1967, and a partially declassified memo from the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology delivered what might be the most understated conclusion in the history of government documents. It read, in part, quote, "Our final examination of trained cats convinced us that the program would not lend itself in a practical sense to our highly specialized needs." End quote. Translation, cats don't follow orders, and you can't make them. The total cost of Operation Acoustic Kitty is estimated at around $20 million in 1960s money. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly equivalent to $150 million today. All of it spent to confirm what every cat owner on Earth could have told them for free. But here's the thing. As absurd as this story is, it actually tells us something important about how intelligence agencies operate, especially during periods of intense geopolitical pressure. When the stakes feel existential, the normal rules of common sense get suspended. Ideas that would be laughed out of any boardroom in the private sector get funded, staffed, and pursued for years because the fear of falling behind the enemy overrides rational cost-benefit analysis. Acoustic Kitty is funny. Absolutely. It's one of the great punchlines of Cold War history. But it's also a cautionary tale about what happens when powerful institutions operate without accountability, without outside perspective, and without anyone in the room willing to say, hey, has anyone here ever actually met a cat? The project was officially declassified in 2001 as part of a broader release of CIA documents, and almost immediately it became one of the most popular and widely shared stories from the Cold War era. It's been featured in books, documentaries, podcasts, and museum exhibits. There's even a small memorial plaque at CIA headquarters, though the agency has never officially confirmed or denied its existence, because of course they haven't. What Acoustic Kitty really represents is the collision between human ambition and animal indifference. The CIA had the best technology, the best minds, and virtually unlimited resources. But none of that mattered because at the end of the day, a cat is going to do whatever a cat wants to do. And honestly, isn't that kind of beautiful? So the next time your cat ignores you when you call its name, just remember it's not personal. Your cat is simply maintaining the same glorious independence that once defeated the most powerful intelligence agency in human history. If you enjoyed this story, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It really helps the channel more than you know. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell icon so you never miss a video. We cover stories like this every week, the weird, the forgotten, and the absolutely unbelievable moments from history that you won't believe actually happened. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the most ridiculous thing your cat has ever done? Or better yet, what do you think is the weirdest CIA project ever? I'll be reading through the comments and pinning my favorites. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.